The next topic we're going to talk about is roles and responsibility. I mentioned this earlier when Ralph brought up the situation that occurred there. So we always recommend the creation of a simple document that defines the roles and responsibility of the team members. This is not a list of who's performing the work. This is a list who's responsible to make sure the work gets done. So we use a document called a responsibility matrix. It identifies the roles, the responsibilities, the authorities of the stakeholders of the team. And this is, again, to identify who owns what task. When we say own, that does not equate to performing or completing the task. They are, although, responsible to ensure that that activity or task gets completed in the time frame established in the schedule. It also, one of the other things we strongly recommend is put in, identify the backup. One thing, if you have a small team, even if you only have 3 or even 2 people, right? If I'm not around because I'm on vacation or something came up, who's the backup? And if you identify on this matrix, then you know when that person isn't in here, it's not here, who do I go to talk to who do I go to talk about whatever this particular topic is? Okay. So again, this matrix helps you identify who the backup is, who's the primary, what are their primary responsibilities. This helps avoid any misunderstanding and confusion, because when you have multiple people and you're not clear who owns what, it always becomes what I call the famous, cross-arm pointing finger that goes on. I thought you were doing it. No, I thought you were doing it. And then it doesn't get done. Make sure you identify responsibilities to all interested parties. And what that means is that if you are using people who report directly to other supervisors and managers, make sure you give them a copy of this so they understand what their folks are going to be doing on the project team. And then it's a tool to help facilitate any conflict that comes up, because if you document it, communicate it, share it, post it, no one should be able to walk around and say, well, I didn't know who I need to talk to, and things don't get done, right? So it's real simple. It's not very complex. So here's a very simple example. Now, the legend, you can decide on what the legend, I'm going to show you multiple examples here. We have our preferred, but I just want to show you different examples. So here is a real simple, this is a very old one that was used in '98. Here are the responsibilities by function, and here are the tasks. And this was relocating an office. So if you look at the legend, P is to prepare, R is to review, A is to approve, D is actually doing the work, C was to coordinate, I was to inspect. So across, I have a VP of operations, a project manager, an office manager, warehouse manager, technician, A shift worker, B shift worker, and moving company. Please also include, if you're subcontracting out, because you can use this to hand to the subcontractor so they also know who they should be talking to. You don't want to give them any excuses not to complete something because they can't find the person they need to talk to. And you hand them one of these things. So again, very simple. Planning to move, well, that was the VP, right? The VP was planning to move. He was doing all the planning, so which are responsible for the planning. And so he's doing C, he's doing the coordination. The research location, the project manager was researching the location. Management approval was the VP, and selecting the moving company was the warehouse guy, okay? And the warehouse manager. And so this is real simple, very straightforward, nothing complicated about it, right? I can look at this and say, okay, I'm the moving guy. Who do I need to interface? Oh, it looks like I need to work with, I'm responsible for getting the trucks loaded and moving. But who do I need to talk to about getting the boxes? Oh, I go over here to number 2, distribution of boxes. Oh, I need to go see the technician, okay? And so this is a simple tool. It comes in different forms. So what I'm going to give you guys is a spreadsheet that allows you, across the top is to list your responsibilities, who all is responsible. who all is going to be involved on the project. And then you can, on the left-hand side, you list the task or the activities. What you can do, and what I've seen many do, is most of you have across the top, you've divided your project by function, by phase, project phase. You can just have the project phases, and then you can list who's responsible for that phase. So this is one example. Let me give you another example. Looks a little different. But again, it's the same thing. So if you look at this, who's, okay, writing, responsible for writing, contributing to review. Okay, this is software, formally accepting, right? Same thing. Project owner, okay, this is what they're responsible for. Users responsible for this. Project manager, okay? System analyst, software architect. Okay? Very straightforward. Nothing, you don't need to make it complicated. I've seen some go way out of hand. So this is one style. Here's another one, right? Here they actually put numbers. So number 1 means actual responsibility. Number 2, general supervision. Number 3, must be consulted. I mean, my personal opinion, I don't like the consulted piece. I'd rather have them either review it or approve. That's it. But this is what they use. Must be notified. And so these guys had a lot of folks in the loop that didn't do anything. They were just informed in the loop. But that's up to them.
Hey, Jess, question.
Yep, go ahead.
What happens when you have people with multiple assignments?
Are you referring to if we talk about Krista and she's got 2 different projects? Is that
no? So like we've used RASI charts before, but like I've had say like a 1 and a 2, like actual responsibility.
Yes, the answer is yes. So the same person can have multiple ones. They can be responsible. They can also be doing the work, as an example. So the answer is yes. And this isn't quite a RASI chart or an RM chart. This is really very focused to the project itself. And it's just the project team. So it's not the organization. So on this team, yes, you can have multiple. So you would have in the same box, you can either do, I always put a slash, right? So whether it's a number or a letter. So let's say responsible. Okay, that's R slash D, doer. So they're responsible, but they're also doing the job, right? So that actually makes it easy for me because you're assigned responsibility, but you're also doing the work. But if I don't see the do next to that or in that box, then you're not the one doing the work. Someone else is doing the work. Other questions? Okay, so any other questions on this? Okay, so we're going to move on to the next topic. I know this is the topic that Brad and Susie really wanted to talk about in this entire class. Estimating cost. Okay, so now we get to the financial piece. Now, once we've identified the skills and the resources, the number of resources, the effort hours, and the estimated effort hours and the estimated duration, now we can really start talking about how we can now roll up the costs associated with those tasks. So what you need to do, and Ralph, in your group, when I dropped in your team, you guys were having that discussion that you may have to break down your Post-it notes, the task or activities down a little bit further so you can actually estimate the actual hours. And so that's another thing to be conscious as you're going through this. This is why you may have to do some homework. You will do some homework. You may have to break down some of those Post-it notes down or those activities down one level down so you can actually estimate the duration of that work. Because it becomes very difficult at a very high level. It's very difficult. You can throw a bucket and say, I have a bucket, but what's in the bucket, right? So we may have to break that down a little bit further so you get some level of estimated hours. So again, when we're looking at estimated cost, you have to look at your activity, you have to look at the labor hours, and you need to look at the material cost. Now, from a financial perspective, initially what I always tell the project managers, let first pass at this, we need to understand the labor hours and any material costs. So that means this, just the pure labor hours and the labor rate. One of the things we always recommend is for the accounting function to give the project managers either a quote unquote company labor rate you use or very specific cost, labor hour cost for the different functions in the organization. But for the purpose of the exercise, I'm going to ask each team to define, and then I'd like you to post it on the on your project brief, one hourly estimated cost. And if you don't know what yours is as a company, I can give you, I would just say, just use $45 an hour, and we just use that as for the purpose of the exercise. But in your organization, Brad, do you guys have an hourly internal cost that you guys use for internal projects?
We don't have a cost for projects, but we do know what our labor rates are for different production jobs within the plant or within the different farm field labor. So we have a kind of a farm field labor rate and a plant production hourly rate.
What about staff? Let's say accounting staff.
Yeah, we don't.
Okay. So like I said, most companies have those rates because that's the rate that they charge out to, and you guys use kind of an overhead factor, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Fully benefit up the rate.
Yeah, fully loaded, right? So
we charge an admin fee on top of that.
Yeah, so from a rough estimate perspective, what we always recommend at the very least is have a company rate regardless. Average everything out, put your factor on it, and say use this internal rate. And at least it's a ballpark, it's not exact, but at least it allows you to come up with a project budget, right, when we're talking about from a labor perspective. And so companies there are lots of companies, and in my past life, we had for every particular function of the organization a hourly internal cost rate, obviously averaged out and so on. But at least that allowed us, especially when I worked for Siemens, where we were doing internal costs, and so we can come up with a price for our customer. You have to come up with a rate, and so that's a little more in depth. But for the purpose of the exercise, if you don't know your internal cost, or you can come up with your own, I would say use $45 an hour, and that kind of becomes our base for the labor rate. And the reason we do that is what you're going to do is to look at, if you look at the project, and this is how you break it down. So those points or those boxes that are bold, okay, that's the single level. So if we take task number one here, major task number one, this one goes down 5 different levels. So work package, although we're not doing work package, it would be a task, but at your lowest level, you're going to look at the cost. And if I have 2 items here, one for 200 and one for 300, I roll that up to the next level, and then I add that level up, and that rolls up to the next level, and add that level up, and that rolls up. And that is the cost. All of this is the cost of that particular task. Now, for the purpose of the class, what I'd like you to do is take your effort hours and multiply that times whatever hourly rate you as a team either come up, or if you use the $45. The other cost that should be included in each one of those boxes is going to be your material cost or resource cost. So Kevin, in your case, where really you only have one of your phases is really your internal cost, every other phase is a subcontractor, that you're basically going to have a subcontractor cost for each of those other boxes. Does that make sense? In the case for you, Brad, and for team one, predominantly what you've identified is your internal labor cost. Is that correct? Oh, I'm sorry, your internal labor hours. Okay, so basically just roll up your labor cost. Let's not worry about your material costs at this point. I just want you to run through the exercise that we're going to do here very shortly with whatever things, effort hours that you've identified, multiply it. And what I want you to do is then to put it in, create a new tag and use a blue tag, and enter the dollar amount on that tag for each of the individual activities. Got that? Okay. So you basically go back, take the effort hours, multiply it times your quote unquote, let's just say an average company rate, hourly rate, and then you're going to roll that up. What I'd like to see, and again, I know a lot of you still need to go back and finish some of this, so we're going to allow you time to do that. But want to see it rolled all the way to level 2, and then for those of you that are complete, and I think Kevin, you're the only one, and maybe Ralph, team 3 and team 4, you guys may be able to roll it all the way to the top of the project. 2 numbers I want to see: total hour at the top, total hours, and total dollars. And let me show you an example. Sorry. Everybody see the screen? So if you look, everybody see, okay, good. So if you look at this, I have total hours, right, which is in purple. And I forgot what rate was being used for this one, but here's in blue is the total dollars. 20 hours, well, if you divide 500 by 20 hours, that kind of gives you the rate. But this is at each individual task or activity, okay? And then that gets rolled up to the top level, okay? Total hours in purple, dollars in blue. And then, you add all of those up to get you the total for the project, okay? Across the board. So the total, in their case, this is what that was: number of hours and cost. Okay? That gives us it gives us multiple things from a financial perspective. It gives us the project based on how we broke down, identified the tasks, identified the resources. It tells us how many hours and the dollars. But it also tells us for each phase, right, if we're going to track it financially, if I'm going to use the dollars as a project manager to help me also track the project, how well I'm doing on the project, I can now roll up the phase for, in this case, identifying LMS features, what that's costing me, what the labor hours are, and what it's costing me from a dollar perspective. So I can, what percent complete, when we start taking this horizontally to create a schedule, I can now start looking at my burn rate on this project, on that timetable, both from an hours perspective and a dollar perspective. 2 key performance indicators you need to look at: burn rate on your hours, burn rate on your dollars, in addition to the percent complete of duration. Questions?
Yeah, Jess, when you're using, so most of our project is done by contractors.
Mm-hmm.
The electrical is T&M, so we can calculate their hours.
Yep.
But like the millwrights are a hard bid. So
Okay.
from a dollars perspective, it doesn't make any difference to us how long it takes them to do it. Only from a project completion perspective does it matter. But
That's correct.
so should we just,
You still
go
need to
ahead.
put Ralph, you still need to put in there at least your estimated contract value, because that's still a cost. It's what you're going to pay the contractor to do. So just put a number in there for the contractor. And you know, team three's got the same challenge because most of the work is being done outside. It's just the top box is just going to have the dollar for that contractor.
And we can break it down by the amount of hours anyways, because we're going to do it in three different sections on
Yep.
on the install of equipment.
By the way, in the past, we've used this for others, that it also helps folks. Once you define what work is expected from the contractor, and if you have an internal figure, right, because you have to create well, I shouldn't say you have to. Most companies create a budget of how much they want to spend for a capital expenditure project, right? So this is a way to say, okay, these are the major tasks. This is what we think those costs are. So you now have a baseline that when you get the proposal in from your subcontractor that you can compare. It's not going to be all the way down to the detail level, but now at least you can start saying, these guys, one or two things, well, more than one or two things, questions that are going to be asked. If this is what I budget and I get 3 proposals and all of them are way higher than my original budget, then I need to start thinking of, are we talking about the right scope? Am I way off on what this should cost? Because it could be on me. On the other hand, it could be that maybe all these guys are really, you start questioning why is help us understand why you have this figure if especially all of them are high. Now, if you got 2 high ones and 1 low, really low, you got to ask the exact same question, right? Why is this one way low? And so,
yeah, we ran into that exact thing on this project.
yep.
From the same contractor too. It was kind of interesting.
So again, it helps you when you go through this, even if you're subcontracting that work, it helps you start establishing, you have something to compare to. You can now start asking questions. At the end, you may end up negotiating at some point, but you've done it from a starting point versus not really having a knowledgeable background of when a decision is made. Everything is about trying to make a educated, knowledgeable decision when you're paying a subcontractor to come in and do work. And so,
Thanks.
Any questions? Okay, so here's what we're going to do, because I know it's 11:20 now. I'm going to give you 25 minutes just to get as much as you can get done. When we come back, each team is going to report out what you've done today. So the report out will consist, what did we do today? And it's also going to be your final report out for today. So also tell us, it was a good day, what did you learn, what you didn't learn. Your homework, if you do not complete the costs exercise, and if you have not completed the hours and duration piece, your homework is between today and next Friday. Take some time in the next 7 days, go in there and try to complete as much as possible between now and next Friday. All right? Any questions? Okay, because I'm going to be sending you guys off here. Oh, let me shut off the share. Probably, I think, just looking at the time, probably give you 25 minutes because we need to give you the report outs. And I'm going to have to hop off at exactly 12, so Guy will be closing out the day because I have to jump on a call. All right, so let me send you guys. Yeah, you have a question? No question? Okay, off you go.
He's got 4 guys coming, or?
Yeah, so 4, and it's 8 days. So
I'd say
8 hours.
9 divided by, for the day, it's gonna be basically $500 a day, an hour, or?
No, he's not that high. So he's got, so 8 hours a day times 4 equals, so 32 hours a day times 8 equals 256 hours. And so we can divide 27,900 divided by 256 equals 108.98. So we'll say 109 an hour. So O&M's rate is going to be 109 an hour.
Okay.
So I'll work on the, what's our internal rate going to be?
It's gotta be pretty close to O&M's, isn't it?
No, our internal rate, well, for maintenance guys is about 37, 38 an hour, but we can just say 40 across the board.
Yeah, that's fine.
That'll get us ballpark.
And that's fine, as long as, don't forget, put it on your project brief that your internal rate is $40, because,
Yeah, we might have to go 60. I think that's what we allocate for, internal.
oh, is that what you
$60.
allocate it from? Okay, then put 60.
That's 60 across the board?
Yeah.
Then use 60.
And we can correct it to come Tuesday. We can check with Barron or accounting or financials and find that out. Because we're gonna have to figure out on the managers what we get billed to.
God dang it, I wrote down the colors and now I lost it.
Blue is the dollars. You already have the purple, right? You have the purple. Really?
Purple, electrical.
Oh, I see. You're talking about the Post-it notes.
No, just the, yeah. So blue is dollars
Right.
and purple are, we already got the hours. Okay.
Yeah,
Got
you
it.
already have the hours. All you're doing is adding the blue. And at the top, when we get to the phase, you're going to add tags to that, and it should be the purple total hours for that phase and the total dollars for that phase. Oops.
How close do our prices need to be to realistic?
It would be curious if we stick to that, but I think our biggest variant is actually going to be the estimation of hours the work is going to be. So I think we can set the price, and then if we find that we're completely off our budget estimation, then we could adjust some hours. But I think we could probably be pretty close on pricing. We could go up or down $5 here or there, but I don't think it needs to be exact. And then if it is over, we can always put in there, you know, in our planning, we could go back and add a change order section and contingency.
What dollar rate did you agree on?
We were trying to come up with several different ones depending on what the project was. It's like landscaping versus plumbing versus electrical.
Okay. Yeah, whatever assumption, remember, those are assumptions you're making. Make sure you place them in the assumptions board, which is right below the WBS. Yeah, especially when you're dealing with external contractors, you're making certain assumptions. Cost is $1, right? So that you need to make sure you record that.
So is it more helpful for us to maybe put together the assumptions on cost per hour and then
Yep.
divide it up after and go into the things?
Yep.
How many hours did we, did someone total up the hours?
I'll do that next.
I think it was 291.
And our budget was 480,
Yeah,
or at least our first swing at it.
the first random guess. Yeah. 291 hours times 52 is 15,132.
What'd you say your total hours are?
291.
And you had 480 was your estimate?
And that was the guess that I had, yeah, based on when we were doing the beginning.
Wow. Well, you're definitely going to be under budget. Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, ours is we don't get very complicated because we don't have materials and subcontractors and all that other stuff that we have to add into it. And there's no new software to buy. It's really just the hours to get the work done. So
yeah, yours is pure labor hours, but the process is still the same.
Yep.
You add the boxes, right? So you have both material and labor costs, and you add the boxes and you roll it up. But yeah, yours is more labor intensive. So someone's going to be happy. Your sponsor's going to be happy that it's less. So guess what your new budget's going to be?
Right.
10% less of our budget.
Exactly. It always is. I mean, I did it as I would do the same thing because, again, the next question is, when you ask the person who you go interview the person who's performing the task, they always add a pad to, a little padding to it. And, so I would always go and say, okay, great number. Let's subtract 20% off. Project manager, that's your objective. Make it work. Okay. You guys are doing good. It looks like you guys won't have homework to do this weekend.
Yay!
We're
So we
not doing the roles and responsibilities, Jess?
No, we're not going to do anything on that. I'll just send, and just want to make sure everybody knows, I'll send out the form. It's really not that complicated. Now, what you can do, I mean, if you want to, just list across the top. In fact, I may ask you guys, all of you to do that. Across the top, each phase, which team member is going to own each of those phases? Who's going to be responsible to make sure phase 1 gets done, phase 2 gets done, phase 3. A project manager ultimately is responsible for everything, but this is where you start using the team to complete some of these things.
Okay.
And we don't have class on Tuesday. Did I hear that right earlier?
That's correct. Our next class is Friday next week.
Okay.
So the last 2 classes are Friday next week and then the following Tuesday.
Okay.
I think some of the participants had something going on Tuesday, so that's why it was scheduled that way.
Got it.
this is gonna be really hard for me to help you because I don't know
Yeah.
I don't know anything about this project.
Yeah, we've also got quite a bit of work steps on here.
Well,
Yeah.
we picked a pretty big project here. I mean,
Yeah,
we should have built a parking lot. Just randomly coming up with an idea.
Yeah, that definitely was the easiest project I've seen because it's just oversight and everyone,
Yeah.
all the different contractors are doing the work.
And I've done one before.
We should have rearranged the office.
Yeah. I think there was an equipment one I was trying to steer you guys towards, but hey, you know what? You bit off a good one. What you might find too is that in doing your homework, you may want to pull in some resources to give you some insight to some of this as you go through it as well, to help putting some of the numbers together.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we've done that. I mean, this is why we hired our consultant team to help us get this whole ERP system, let alone this inventory module. Right, Brad? You can't do it all.
Yeah, no doubt. I think it's a collaborative effort here, and giving an opportunity for everybody to provide input. Sometimes that can be for lack of a better term, can be a messy process. So, if you designate somebody as the expert in the project and you turn the project over to them, we're not really managing a project, we're managing that person.
Right.
And that's, we were trying to be the project managers, which even when you manage another contractor, it still becomes your project to manage.
Right.
And don't hesitate to, as you build this out, your consultant is just as much as part of this as anything else. So you may need to give them a view of this and say, this is how we're project planning, and we'll do some of this stuff, and to have them vet out some of these hours and times and things like that, because they're going to be doing the work.
Well, if we were really doing this project for real, I would add more people to the team. Maybe we need to do that and list it on our project team members on our project brief over here.
Yeah, and that's the difference between the function of taking the class and doing it in this environment, but we always simulate with live projects because it just adds more value to what you guys are doing, so you can actually go utilize this. You maybe add it in the background, start bringing on the team members for this, and working on this at the same time you're going through the class from a homework perspective. As I said, you can bring in other individuals that are actually going to be working on this and get them actively involved in it.
Because we have a lot of supervisors in this group, not a lot of doers.
Okay, so you're working on 4.0, 4.1's done, we got 4.2. Well, this is where we ended, right? So now we've got to go back and we've got to do it from the start of doing all the resources and all that and everything, right?
How much time do we have left? My timer says 20 minutes still.
6:54. You all seem to get stuck.
Yeah, you're about less than 7 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and again, the purpose of why we ask when we do this class, bring a project that's real, because even if you don't, I understand you picked one piece here, but for you guys are going through this, at least now you can leave the class and say, here are things we need to consider and look at as you go through this. And so, again, we're simulating, right? Doesn't have to be exact of what you're going to go do, but the intent is just for you to learn how can you apply going back on if this is a project you're doing now, how you could apply some of this to that project. And you're right, Brad, this is a big a big project. It always is in any organization.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a huge project, and realizing, what all the steps are involved in project management. We probably could have just limited the list of the headers to, 5 or 6 items, and not got so caught up in making sure it was complete and accurate.
okay. I like this suggestion though. We before we go off and do our homework and try to do every one of these boxes, why don't we make sure we have the red ones right? Are we going to eliminate any more?
Yeah, I think we should. ROI and budget review probably could either be combined or some of those things eliminated that would already have been determined with the system we selected, and we contracted with both the software company and the consultant to implement. And then
Hey, Brad, I'll just finish my comment. What I would recommend next week then is, as you're doing your homework, is to pull in those subject matter experts and have them either add, change, modify to some degree the level of what you have in the project already defined.
All right. Guy, you're going to take over from here and do the report outs. So which team wants to report out first?
We can go first. I have a call at noon as well that I have to jump on.
Okay, so which team is that?
Sorry, team 2.
Team 2. So Guy, can you show the screen, team 2 screen?
Where did team 2 go?
To the right of
Top
team
right.
1.
Top right. There we go. We got team 2. Okay, we're in. There you go.
Why don't you close your clock? There you go.
Gotcha. Everyone see?
I moved mine up. Oh, did he? I did. Okay.
Yep, we can see. So what, remind me again what we're reporting out on.
Yeah, so first tell us what you did on your chart, how you rolled it up, what's the number, where did you end up? Because I know you guys rolled yours up. Total hours. Oh, I see you upped your hours.
There may have been a math calculation the first time, or incorrect calculation.
And then kind of first thing is team, go through and walk through how you guys rolled up your dollar, your hours, your dollar, what is your dollar rate that you use internally, compare that to your original budget that you guys had identified during the project brief, do the comparison, you guys high, low, and then each team member, your reflection for today.
Cool. So yeah, our original budget was 480 hours. This is based on some napkin math and guesstimation in the early part of the project. After the breakdown, we came to 306.25 hours of total of work. Our project is pretty straightforward. We don't have materials or money. We don't need money for buying new software or outside subcontractors or anything like that. So it's very straightforward and just encompasses hours worked, labor hours. And after working through the math, kind of between the 3 teams that will be involved with this project and the people working on those teams, we came up with a $40 an hour rate just for labor hours, but then adding in the workers' comp and insurance and all that stuff, we did a 30% burden on that or markup, so we came to $52 an hour total for labor hours, and got to that the total hours there on the right for the total cost of $15,925. It's cheaper than the original budget, so that's good, I suppose.
So what was the original budget?
For 480 hours.
So your original estimate was 480 hours. You're at $306. So it's roughly $174 or less than that. I'm sorry, 174 hours.
Less, yeah.
Less. Do you know why?
I was probably just overestimating the time it was going to take before we actually got into the specific breakdown and lining out the tasks and once you get into the more level of detail, thinking about how much time it actually is going to take to do this specific task. So we eliminated a few stickies too that were, either incorrect or not necessary. It didn't make sense. That might be part of it as well.
Okay, good. As your sponsor, I'm very happy you're giving me money back.
Welcome.
I still want more back, but
we'll see what we can do. Yeah.
Just to make sure you don't go over in the end.
Right.
Okay, reflections. We can start with you, and then you can pick your team members to reflect.
Sure. Reflection for me, this has been my favorite part so far. Once you start putting in the who's going to do it and the duration and how many hours, the skill needed for it and how many team members, really kind of, for me, it started to bring it all, full circle essentially, right? Let's actually get the project lined out. And as I've said before, it's really helpful for me because often we don't get to this level of detail when we're doing these kind of projects. So I'm really excited about it and happy to see it all play out.
Okay. Next team
Chris?
member.
Okay, I was going to say something similar as well. Like once we started to assign resources, it started to, I started to be able to better visualize what it was going to look like. So that was cool. And also, yikes, I've never looked at project costs like this before. And oh my goodness, they are pricey and they add up quickly. So that's all I've got. Julie?
Great process. I'm very detail oriented and I don't like to answer big picture questions unless I've gone through the weeds like this and my numbers are real and based on something. So this is very helpful to me. Jamie.
Cool. So I really liked this too, especially once, like all of my teammates are saying, we started assigning actual numbers to things. I'm somewhat of a nerd, so I was going through it and I was like, oh my gosh, I know I can export this to an Excel spreadsheet and do all kinds of crazy cool stuff with it. And so that got me really jazzed. And I'm super excited about the possibility of using this in my actual work moving forward because I'm a dork. So yeah, once we hit that flow point, it was just like zoom, and I loved it.
Yeah, when you actually, it's all good feedback actually, because when you start putting numbers towards activities and tasks and looking at it, you start questioning whether those tasks and activities are the right ones to have in there as well. So I know with the team I'm working with, we've modified and changed quite a bit and have eliminated a lot of stuff compared to our charter. It really pushes the details when you start looking at numbers.
And I'll
And it
just
works
do my-
both ways. Are you over planning it, or overestimating the scope of work, or are you under? Because it works both ways.
And I'll chime in briefly. The trick here is to just get alignment under what you're trying to do and what you're trying to accomplish. And it may take a new group of people together like this a long time to kind of beat your head against the wall a little bit until everyone finally understands and agrees this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it. And I think this group at least reached that point today, which then will allow for a better project moving forward, where everyone has agreed that here's what we're doing, here's when it's going to be done, here's how long it's going to take, here's the number. But it does take a little bit to finally get on that path. So good work, team 2.
Yeah, just remember this whole process. Most of us are pretty good at identifying what it is we need to do. We're not as good as identifying how we're going to do it. And it's important we understand how, because it has a cost impact, which, and you're going to see in the next week or two, has an impact to time. And so if we're still way, at the 64,000 foot level trying to plan a project, we're going to miss a lot of things. And so that's where projects get in trouble. Now, I can also tell you that I've seen it go the other way. We get so far down into the details that we kind of missed the big picture. So we got to balance the two. You got to get down to a level low enough that makes sense and it's manageable. And like I said, I think it was team 4 that when you guys go up, you guys can talk about it, but you guys had to break some of those postage notes down a little bit further so you could have a better understanding of the effort necessary. So just get it down to a level that is necessary to break it down so you can track it. And so, good. Who's next?
Okay. Any other team members, or you guys, is team 2 wrapped up?
That's
it.
Okay. Who wants to volunteer next? Team 1, 2, or 3? Sorry, 1, 3, or 4? Any takers?
4, we'll go.
Team 4. All right, let me zoom into you guys real quick.
So we didn't get all the total hours. We didn't get everything totaled out. We're still focusing on getting the hourlies in for each job, and we found multiple duplicates too. We're trying to eliminate.
So you found duplicates in your actual the activities and the tasks that you've identified?
Yes, just different wordings, but meant the same thing. So I think
That's
it was
okay.
when we did that brainstorming, we didn't go back and review our definitions.
I would go ahead and show what phases of the project you did roll up, because it looks like you did some of the roll up, and just show what you've done so far.
So on the planning side, we went with the managers. We just went a rough guess of $60 an hour. We're gonna fine tune it next week once we get our accounting back on board and go over the hourly labor rate, what we're accounting for. So the planning phase, we broke it down on the managers, what we met, how many days it's going to take for each one to do. And then on the acquisition phase, on the ordering of equipment, ordering buckets, getting contractor codes, ordering hardware. We added the hours and stuff and got that going, and then same with the demolition phase. So what I think this is great for us. You know, we've never really, like Jeff said in the beginning, you know, you got software programs out there on the market that you go, but it goes to step 6, and you know, you got the Gantt chart. That's what we were focusing on at the start, and we totally missed this whole planning phase. We've only met maybe 2 or 3 times for this project, and we missed a lot of things, and that's what we're realizing, that we're skipping and missing. We're either missing a lot of jobs and underestimating the amount of labor that we're going to need, and also not adding managers to the meetings that we need to have for the planning stages.
Got it. That's actually important. The team I'm working with realizes that too. There's certain subject matter experts or folks that need to be a part of this to help define some of these buckets of information and the tasks and activities to help plan the project, which is actually critically important. So it's good you're going through it, and as you go through this even more and doing from a homework perspective to catch everything up, you can remove the duplicates and just and make sure you definitely review them. So whoever wrote the Post-it note, before you either eliminate it or consolidate it, just make sure everyone's on the same page about what was meant that was written on there, because
that's what we did as a group effort.
Good.
Prior to this, I think we would have just went ahead and removed it and not asked anybody. So
Yep.
It's also a great team building system that we're doing here together.
It's good too. And what I recommend too is, especially when you're working in Mirror here or you're working with live Post-it notes in a room, is don't ever delete anything or scrap anything. What you can do in Mirror here is just highlight a square shape around it and put out of scope or does not apply. put it off to the side. That way you know what you're excluding and why you did it. If you get rid of it, you won't know if you review it later. If something comes up and you need it, it's already there created for you.
Okay. Sounds great.
Got it. Reflections from the team members and yourself on today?
Yeah, I think the deeper we dive into this thing, it's just the more I realize I didn't know about planning a project. You know, I mean, I've planned lots of projects and I've never done, you know, this kind of detail. It's always kind of been off the hip, you know, I mean, pretty much always. I've had lots of successful projects, but I've had some catastrophic failures as well. So I guess putting it all kind of in this kind of umbrella of how to do it, it's really helpful as far as I can tell.
Good, yeah. More often than not, what we run into is work gets done one way or another, and sometimes we're lucky about what the end result looks like. What tends to happen is, as you go through a project, you get that feeling that it may not be going the way you need it to go, so the end result looks good and you get good successful projects within the company that you're working for. That's when we start working 80 hours a week to make up the difference. And that's when a project manager becomes the doer and starts just getting everything done to kind of catch up on the project and make sure it comes out the right way. All in this pre-planning part of this and defining the resources is to ensure that we've got the right people on the team, the right resources planned, and dollars associated to it to make sure that that doesn't happen. Okay, feedback from the other team members?
Yes, there. Yeah, the way we're laying it out, I never even thought about the things that we're bringing up right now. Amount of people working on it, cost per person, who's being paid this, who's being paid that. You got to break it down a lot. And open my eyes to things that I wasn't seeing before. So it's helped me out a lot.
Good. Yeah, this is the comment I made to our team is, and you're getting into the thick of the pre-planning here, and it's 80% planning, 20% execution. This is where some folks say, wow, this is cumbersome going through this, but if you think about it, project managers own three things: the scope, the schedule, and the budget. And if you're not doing it to this degree, I don't know how you own the scope, the schedule, and the budget and be successful at it. So there's really only a way to do that, and that's to do this pre-planning and get into the numbers and really put it together.
Yep.
Okay, next team member.
Rolando.
Yeah, I like this lesson. It's teaching me a lot. I'm pretty young, and for me to be in the lead position, this is going to be a good start for me. Probably be a good start for me to take over my boss Darius' position.
He's already trying to kill me off.
So I did like it.
Good. It works for you. You guys can work through this together and get this built out by next Friday?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Well, we'll have an expectation of seeing that. Any other team members on your team that need to contribute here and reflect?
That's all of us.
Great. Any questions before we move on to the next team?
No, I think we're good here.
Okay. Team 3 or team 1? Who's up?
I'll jump in with team 1. Guy, if you want to bring the screen to team 1.
Yep. Let's focus on this part here for you. Go ahead.
So we were able to cost out a number of the headers or the main topics of the WBS, but we didn't get through everything. We kind of discovered we were rather ambitious ambitious with the definition of our project and kind of have been going back through and dissecting the work steps and trying to whittle it down to something that is more manageable for this exercise. But the project we picked is a huge project to begin with, so it's just part of the challenge of trying to learn at the same time, apply something that looks reasonable to the project. I am very touched by the comments about finance and cost, and accounting gets some vindication here in this part of the training. For everyone who's found enjoyment in working with the costs and understanding it, and where that brings some relevance and materiality to the project, and also maybe helping understand the total scope of the project in terms of the financial cost. But for us, it's more the reflection. My reflection is more, it's a collaborative effort, and you need to have subject matter experts to help make sure you have all the bases covered. At the same time, you need to make sure what the business needs are and make sure those are covered, and anything that's unique or specific to the project or the people that are on the project team, those all those different constituencies need to be covered.
Brad, do you want to touch a little bit about on the multiple labor rates?
Yeah, we identified three different skills that were needed: an IT labor rate, an IT person, a IT consultant, and then we also had tasks that were bundled, or there was a combination of an IT internal person and an external consultant. So we set our IT rate at $60 an hour, which is our fully burdened labor rate, and then the rate for the consultant was just kind of the lower end of the consultant's rate. Fixed rate per hour is typically how they quote their work, and then we came up with a bundled rate when it was both an IT or a internal user and a consultant. We averaged the two, and that was the rate. Just need to make sure we accounted for the total labor hours between the two if we're using the bundled rate.
Okay. So I'll show everyone what I meant by eliminating some steps here a little bit. If you can see on screen here, we have 3.0, which is software selection. In this project, we're talking about one module of inventory within the entire ERP scope. So software selection in our project charter was excluded. So what I helped the team do is just put a square box around all these items and then just put out of scope. Can everyone see that where it says out of scope for those columns? So what you can do is, if you're doing your homework and you're reviewing through things, don't delete them. Move Post-it notes out of the way. You can move them to the bottom of the screen. Just mark them as out of scope and jot down that they're excluded as part of your work breakdown structure, but don't delete them. So that way you can understand what you're not using and what you are using. Because if you do end up having to use them later, they're already created. You don't have to recreate all the Post-it notes and whatnot. And then what everyone's ultimately trying to do is add everything up and come up with a total of hours and dollars based on the work breakdown structure. And you want to compare that to what your project chart had for a budget. So this team here has a budget of about $500,000. So Brad and team, you're going to be comparing the $500,000 to what the total of the WBS outputs for you based on the hourly rates that you've created at the end of this. So when you put all your homework together, you're going to see how close you are to that number above and beyond or below. And then as with the rest of the teams, figure out, well, why are we low or why are we high?
Just lower Chewy's rate.
Okay, feedback from the rest of the team members?
Yeah, I found this exercise a little bit painful, and let me explain. So somebody said that they're a detail person. I'm the big picture person. So I want somebody to be doing this because I want confidence that the number that they give me of 500,000, for example, is the right number. And I think the lesson to take away when you take this to your owner or boss or whatever, somebody higher up the channel, that yeah, you have all the detail prepared, but don't be offended when they go, I just want to see the last page and the bottom line and what dates it's going to be done. I don't know. I mean, I've done a lot of projects too. So when I say painful in my current position, because if I was the project manager here, I'd be all over this and I'd be digging down into the detail. But just as that's just my reflection.
No, but Bill, you actually bring up a good point. I would actually say there's a problem if you, as the position you have in the business, were working at a project manager level and were loving this and knew all the details. I'd actually question why you're working at that level of granularity in your role. This gets back to the roles and responsibilities that Jess was talking about. The roles and responsibilities matrix is, what is your role and responsibility at the level that you're at in the business as related to this project? And defining that in the matrix then sets the stage for everybody else as to how everybody plays a role within this project. Okay. Chewy?
Yeah, for me, my main takeaway as a project manager in the future is when I bring in key contributors to the group, kind of set the expectations in my head already previous to them coming in as to how much they're going to contribute. For this project, it was very hard for me to contribute without prior experience in a similar project. So that's why I say if I bring in a key contributor and they've never put a piece of equipment together, but they're going to be hands-on installing it, don't be too hard on them if they're having a hard time contributing. Just kind of guiding them along, stuff like that. I enjoyed the fact that you said don't delete any stickies, because that goes along with the brainstorming and just throwing everything out there. My first instinct when we were talking about this is out of scope, I was like, let's go delete them. Why are they even in the WBS to begin with? But I appreciate that, not deleting them and still giving them some sort of importance to it. And that's pretty much it on my end. I enjoyed this. I really did enjoy this because I like numbers too, so I enjoy putting budgets together on projects.
Good. I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, as far as maintaining the work that you put in, it's all important. Just because we see it's out of scope and we don't move it, I don't like to have anyone delete anything either. Think about this: if you were doing this with Post-it notes up on the wall in a conference room, we tend to say to do it on butcher paper, so you can pull the paper down, roll it up, and save it, and then continue to work on it. But again, let's fast forward, let's say on this project, we're doing ERP today, and let's say 5 years go by and you need to make modifications to ERP and change things. If you have this work and this information ready to go, you could bring this back up, and within hours, you could readily read through all this and have a baseline to start with and make decisions from and look at it. Or maybe there's another software module that you're trying to put in, and 80% of what you have up here applies. You're that much further ahead in your planning, and it makes for great starting points, not only in project management, but in anything else that you do. Maintain the work that you do, and you can use it for reference points for other projects. Okay. All right, so I think that leaves our last team, which gets down to team 3, I believe. You guys ready?
Yep.
Just go find you here. Okay, team 3, did you get to totals, or where did you get to?
So we started working on it, and we realized we needed to define what our were as far as price per each of the contractor and each of the different categories. So if you go down to where the assumptions box is below,
You have assumptions at the bottom?
Yeah.
Okay.
So these are kind of what we started looking at as far as cost per hour for each area. And then our plan is to go back through and apply it to each of the different categories. It's kind of interesting to go through this and see, okay, a lot of the labor for landscaping is going to be relatively cheap, just because they usually bring in cheap labor. But then the landscaping design, of course, is going to be a little bit more costly. And then also it was kind of interesting because this is a project one of our team members has ongoing, and you don't necessarily get bids back in cost per hour. So the asphalt, for example, we had a total cost for the whole project plus materials. And of course, it's not itemized out by labor and costs for products.
Yeah.
But basically, this is what we came up so far, and then we need to go back through and apply it out to the rest of the board.
Yeah, so for you guys, this is when you're working on projects that has a lot of contractors, subs, or individuals you're paying out to go work on it, is how you ask them to answer your request for quote, and the breakout will help in putting the budget together and stuff. Because if you get just a lump sum of everything together, it's $50,000 all inclusive for materials and labor. It's hard to break it out and put it into the buckets. So as you plan that, you can plan how you do your RFPs and RFQs to get information. Okay, so you're going to go back through. You're going to apply these rates through your throughout your WBS. And did you completed all the other pieces? So you just have the budget piece to redo and total everything up?
Yep, we started a little bit, as you can see on 2.0, but yeah, we basically have everything else done except for the budget part. Sorry.
Got it. That works. And then your original budget for all of this was how much?
115,000. 150. Sorry.
150,000. Do you think you're going to be above or below that based on what you know today?
We are not prepared to give you that answer.
That's a good answer, actually. That's a good answer. That basically says, hey, I don't know, but I will go find out, and we'll find out by next Friday. Is that fair?
Yep.
Got it. Any other feedback, Josh?
No, I think you're just kind of interesting. Usually I'm maybe not so much in the details of projects, more so on the let's get this done and give me the big picture. So it's kind of nice to see all the different things you have to think about building up to the big picture. And, there's lots of little surprises like permit fees and contractor fees versus flat fees. So just kind of interesting to see it all come together.
Good. I'm glad that's all coming out of this part of this phase of the project as you're planning it all out. So next team member.
I'll go. So I have a little bit of I don't know if it's an advantage or a disadvantage, but I've been a contractor for the past 7 years. So for me, coming into the project management, I have a little bit of an understanding of how we're laying this out and how the prices work. I've done this type of a method, but I haven't used sticky notes. I just use my yellow legal pad and I add everything up and I count my hours for the way I did it with my employees. And then I would figure out what my total cost was needed for my business side as well for the overhead. So this is very similar. It's just creating that allocation and price. But I really like this method and I've used it for the past 7 years and it's worked good for me.
Excellent. Well, you had a different method, different piece of paper, different shape, but in the essence, it's still tackling the same subjects, right?
Yep. And then, like you said, I never throw them away either. I just file them in my file cabinet, and that way I have all my notes, I have all my calculations, everything's right there for each project I've ever done.
Well, the piece that's important too is, we notice this with our construction clients. Project managers switch between jobs somewhat regularly in some cases, right? So when you move, let's say you're on the project, you plan this all out, you're 20% of the way through the execution of it. And for whatever reason, if a new PM or someone else has to take this over, if they don't have all this background, all this information, all this history, I don't know how they can be successful in taking on the project. You know, companies have turnover, they have attrition, people come, people go. From a business perspective, if you set the standard that this is how we do projects, and this is expected that you do go through these planning phases and save these in some way, shape, or form in the standard format, then it becomes, you have that retention of data and that information, and it's easier to transfer individuals between projects and be able to catch up and have the pertinent information to be able to be successful on that project.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other feedback?
None for me.
Good. Any other team members?
I'll go. I think that this is a really powerful tool for just getting into the deep details of these projects, but it also gives you a really a big picture understanding for when you're presenting it to the next level, and maybe all they want to see is just total cost, you know, and hours and things like that. But then they might have a few big picture questions that they ask you, and you'd be able to answer those as well. I think this is really strong for me coming into Carrier, where they're at with a lot of projects that are in the beginning phases, and we will all be on the same page as far as how we are planning these projects out and seeing them to completion by all using this same piece of just the same tool.
Got it. Got it. And I'll give you an example of to what you keyed into is, as you're presenting your project and reporting out to upper management, they may only, to Bill's point, care about, hey, what's that end number? We scoped $200,000, and where are you at in your planning? Well, I'm right there, and I agree with you. We can move forward. But I worked on a project for Jess 16 years ago, and I was asked the question, what number did you come up with? And I said, I think I'm around $200,000. And his response was, I think you're about $1 million off. Unfortunately, he was right. But when I was asked the question, how did you come up with the numbers? It was a piece of paper with no logic to it or anything like that, based on how you put this together. So if you're reporting out from a PM standpoint, you may only be reporting out the high level, but if someone wants to jump into the details, you have all the details ready to go down to an exact hour per action item and resources that you have here.
Yeah.
And it shows that there's actually data and information that's consolidating up into the top number and the top hours. So
I think that's where I was going. I mean, I would, JJ, you know, okay, it's $200,000 or whatever the final is, but I would go, hey, but what did you come up with a plumbing contractor? And you can go down and say, okay, it's $6,400 and we have 32 hours and this is how it's broken out. And then now I have total confidence that you've given all the details on all of them because I randomly picked that. And so it just builds confidence in the fact that the $200,000.
Absolutely.
Right.
yeah, and as a company, if you have if managing projects, if this is the way you manage projects and that's the standard method of running a project, then Bill, you have an expectation that I know all this information is in the background because that's the way we do it. That's where all our employees are trained. Anyone working on a project, you could have 10 project managers. Well, if they're all doing it the same way, the same standard, it becomes a lot easier to talk about projects and trust numbers and that we're going in the right direction and ask the right questions.
You can also peer review it. You know, not one project manager could, hey, can you look mine over? Did I miss anything? Even though they're not involved in the project at all.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time is I've invariably been to companies that just talk about scheduling. Post-it notes, Excel sheets, 3 different versions of software, Excel. I've seen, and then you sit there and go, you don't have a standard way of doing it. You set the standard, you drive consistency. Okay. Anyone else on your team that needs to reflect?
So all of this is a lot of detail. So it just got me thinking, if you actually put in the time, the planning phase and do everything that is a part of this, it is very hard to miss something. So if you actually put the time into doing this, you're more likely to give accurate information to your higher ups and not be $1 million off. So
Yep.
yeah, so
it's good. I completely missed scope and the opportunity. Lots of reasons for that, but 16 years later it might be different. But It is what it is, but we're all learning, right? Okay. Any other team members? Okay, has everybody reflected? Is there anybody that hasn't spoken or reflected on the day? If we've been through all the teams, everyone should have reflected already. Okay, so with that, I know we've gone over by a good 26 minutes here. I appreciate everybody being able to stay on and contribute with going over a little bit of time here, but it is a good to get through the reflections and hear everyone's feedback. The homework assignment is to define all your stickies and all your notes, make sure they're all accurate in the right buckets with the right headers, cost everything out and total all the hours. Put that into a post-it note, all totaled out and summarized, and then do a quick review with your team about how you, on your project charter and brief, what number you came up with and what your WBS actually yielded you. And if you're higher or lower, the conversation next Friday will be, do you know why? Everyone okay with that? Okay, I'll be on here for a few more minutes if anyone has any questions. If we don't, everyone enjoy their weekend. Have a good long weekend. But we'll be here to answer questions if you guys have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Guy.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good weekend, everybody.
Bye-bye.